Today I'm going to introduce you to a time capsule of Northern Soul. I'm going to take you right back to 1970 through to about 1974, which I consider the wonder years of Northern Soul. It was a time when there was an absolute avalanche of music coming into the UK and sending the kids absolutely wild as they were listening to really music that they never knew existed. They knew Motown, they knew Stax, they knew Atlantic, they knew some of the things that had been made big at the Twisted Wheel and been re-released again by EMI, Capitol, Polydor, whatever. But what they didn't know about was some of the fantastic things that was sent onto these shores. Now this collection here is a absolute time capsule of that period, 1970 through to early 74. This is a collection where the guy lovingly bought every reissue he could get his hands on. He also went junking around the local junk shops and buying things. He also went to clubs where he could buy records, and he amassed a little bit more than this. He has sold some of it off. He amassed several hundred Northern Soul records, and I'd like to show you what's in there, because for me this is a time capsule of that period, the wonder years of Northern Soul. This is pre-Wigan, and the guy who sold these records said when Wigan started, he found it too commercialised and lost interest in what was to him a beautiful underground scene. But it just got too big, and he stopped collecting records around about 1970. This collection I'm about to walk you through, I've called it the Time Capsule Collection, ranges over every spectrum of collecting rare soul there was at the beginning of the 70s, when Northern Soul was really in its infancy. And it shows the enthusiasm. His enthusiasm for the Soul City label. There's several Soul City records in there. Beautiful label that Dave Godin put together. Also the Deep Soul label. His enthusiasm for great labels, which we all had in those days. Two, the fact that you needed the sound. So these are acetates that were illegally cut by people up and down the country of great records. This is Al Wilson, Help Me. On the other side is a record that never ever took off. Everything is Everything, Sandy Waddy on Wand. Never took off as a Northern Soul monster like they expected it to. It was like a couple of evening wonder. And then there's another one, Carl Douglas, Something for Nothing, another record that never really took off, and another one that did take off but was very quickly bootlegged by the Remarkables, I Can't Give You Up. And then there's things like Ben Aitken, Satisfied. These are all been cut by people who had the originals or had tapes of them, and then these were sold at the Northern Soul clubs round about £5 a piece. That one's got the Dalton Boys, I've Been Cheated on the B-side. And here's another one, that's a Love Factory acetate. So that was bought a little bit later. We're getting into about 1975 with this one. It's got Love Factory one side and the Spy, The Men from Uncle, maybe 74. But this guy who's this collection, you're about to see every spectrum of rare soul that could be bought in 1970 to 1974. He covered and beautifully looked after it, and then stopped collecting at the end of 74 when he became disillusioned with the scene, when for him it became too commercialised. Okay, before me today is a collection I've just purchased, which I've kept together because this is just a time capsule of the beginnings of Northern Soul. I say the beginnings, it's the era that I got into Northern Soul, which would have been 1970 to about 1974. This is pre-Wigan Casino, and it's just beautifully put together. look, you can just see the sleeves and the records. But the time capsule is here. I'll run through it slowly with a few people. You see, there is a selector disc commissioned reissue from about 1973-74, and there's the famous reissue of Billy Butler's Right Track, and it came over and astonished everybody that it was the instrumental. They got the tapes mixed up at Columbia and sent selector disc the instrumental, which caused a sensation. All of a sudden we could play the instrumental of one of the greatest all-time records. There is the reissue of Jerry Williams' Just Ask Me, which Calla re-recorded, or I should say Jerry Williams re-recorded, and put an extra bit in the middle, and it's got 1973 wrote on it. Now 73 was, that time was just when was the golden years of Northern Soul, in my opinion. It was pre-Wigan, or Wigan was just starting, and the magical things that were being played on the Northern Soul scene were inspiring, spine tingling, hair raising. It was absolutely brilliant. So what there was an avalanche of great records coming into the country, mainly because of Simon Susan, who had gone out to the West Coast and lived in California, and he was finding a lot of things. Obviously people like John Anderson were going to the States as well and bringing records back. And as the English kids and got access to these great records, Northern Soul absolutely exploded. After being such an underground scene at the Twisted Wheel for the mods, playing great soul records, playing a few records that came through as being great Northern Soul records, like Baby Reconsider by Leon Haywood, etc. But today we have a time capsule, and I want to show you what was. This is an absolute mirror image of when I was a kid, and I was in my teens, early 20s, before I went to America looking for records. In 1976 was my first year, and this is what I was getting up on a Saturday morning to go to the market stores, to go to selector disc to find records. Now look what this guy's wrote here. Like One on Decca, heart-wrenching sound, takes the mind right back to those hot and steamy nights spent at the Torch, the Golden Torch in Stoke-on-Trent, and that's how we felt as kids. He's done a few more things on there. The Vibrations he didn't write anything about, but you know, Sock It To Me Baby was an English find. That's a nothing thing that probably came to him in a soul pack or whatever. But anyway, let's have a little flick through these and just have a look at the loving care and how originals are mixed in with second issues. And originals like this he obviously bought because they were good, quite cheap back in the day. I mean, he probably would have bought that for £3, £4, £5. Probably would have got that for maybe £6 or £7. And then there was things like this, another soul. See, and he would have bought this and he would have been really excited about this, but this is a bootleg which came from California. But in those days it was all about having the record, not about original vinyl only. It was about having a record. That's another reissue that came through Selector Disc, where they ask Selector Disc ask Scepter 1 to repress these. And then there's a classic Robert Knight, Love on a Mountain Top. And here's some more reissues that Selector Disc asked Columbia to do, all the OK records, and you see it's got a tiny 45 there, which differentiates it from the original, which have a big 45 this side. But that's a 1973 press, etc. Lucky, very, very common record, but a huge record. In 1971, one of the biggest records in the country. Real Humdinger, real classic. And notice how he's done all this loving thing and then put sellotape of it. And the sellotape has gone and patinaed and gone and browned and foxed, and I think it looks great. I love all this stuff. Look at that, we've got one in the wrong sleeve. And there's another reissue that Selected Disc did, and note the small 45. The original has a large 45, about so big. And let's have a look at some more. I'll just flick through these so you can enjoy what this person was collecting at the time. Now there you go. There's a great Chicago record, but that was the first of the counterfeits. This is a counterfeit copy, whereas this is not a counterfeit copy. It's original press, and it's put, the words are different. There is two versions of this, so at the beginning the words are slightly different. Now have a look at that. That's the way you covered up records in the early 70s. You just rip the label off. What's that all about? Lee Andrews and the Hearts, Gonna Get Along Without You. He didn't want anybody to know what that was, so he just ripped the label off. And there's another reissue, again through Selected Disc. There's a classic Torch record, Fred Hughes, Baby Boy, etc. That was a massive Cats record. Memory Galore, It Ain't Necessary in the early days. Hugely popular Northern Soul classic that today still absolutely packs the floor. The legendary Sue label, which he probably would have picked up on his travels, and again Major Lancey probably picked that up either in a record bar or now this is a fine example of, in the early 70s there was a massive importation of the MGM label, distributors labels in Bradford, and there was allegedly 1 million records dropped in Bradford, Yorkshire, most of them Verves and MGMs, and that's where the Charades, the Triumphs, Walking the Duck, the Superiors, the Shalimars, the Times on MGM, all the MGM things were put there. And there, look, that's right from his that's a weird bootleg of Mickey Lee Lane, Hey Salonay, which actually says Freddie Cannon under there, and nobody to this day knows why it would have said Freddie Cannon. Classic. Jackie Wilson. Spellbound is Chain Reaction, which is a promo, which is really nice, but it's interesting to note that nobody was interested in the B-side, which today is considered an absolute masterpiece of Northern Soul, a little on the blue side, but back in those days Chain Reaction was the one to play, because it was a Torch classic and a Twisted Wheel classic, and it was already established. We'll just have a little look through, and you know, he's got an obscure one there by the Dynamos, great Northern Soul. There's another Selected Disc reissue. So this guy went to Selected Disc on a regular basis. He was buying everything that came into Selected Disc, and here's another one. This is the Spindells 10 Shades of Blue, which is very hard to find on its first press. This is its second press. It's styrene. It's got a much larger Monarch Delta number in the dead wax, which brings it out as a 70s press. Bootleg of Please Let Me In. There was bootlegs done of most of the good Rictics, then some little cheapers. That's a Soul Bowl, or who they used to be called, Groove City, reissue of some great Philadelphia recordings by Frank Virtue and Co. They got some instrumentals done, like the Thrillers' Detroit City Soul. I can remember playing that back in the day. Another Selected Disc reissue, but it's not just all reissues. It is see, that was a new release. I can remember hearing that at the Brit Club in Nottingham as a new release. Very acceptable. Today it's considered funk. You know, there's a reissue of the Sweets without the good B-side. There's another bootleg of Laura Lee, a reissue there of Paul Morier, Black is Black instrumental, which again Selected Disc asked them to, and another reissue there. And then look, the guy was out there and buying Soul Cities and Sues, like most people would. I mean, when you went looking at on market stalls and junk shops, to see these labels was a dream. because everything on that label was collectible, everything on this label was collectible. So here you have it, a time capsule of, I would say, 1970 to 1974. And when I was talking to the gentleman, see, there's an original Lennis Guess, which was hard to find, but apparently came out of the Bradford load. That's where that was discovered, the big import of. And there's a huge torch instrumental. I can remember when people came back from the torch and came to our local soul club on a Friday night, and they had like a dance where they lifted their arms in the air to the rat race. Wonderful classic instrumental. That was nearly a new release at the time. And there's a reissue of Luther Ingram, Excess Trek, which for me, when I first heard that, unbelievable. They played the instrumental first, really. The vocal wasn't played as much, and when I first heard that, just absolutely blew me away. And what was happening was that there was thousands of young kids blown away by this sudden avalanche of this great music. It just never stopped, and there was new records every week, and also classic records like that, which was already a big record at the Twisted Wheel on London label, but they found copies on its import, and it made it easier to find, easier to buy. And here you go, that's another bootleg from the Walking the Duck, which was a huge torch record. And again, there you go, look at those, they're fine examples of selector disc reissues, getting Columbia to reissue the OK label. Just have a look in this one, because I can't really remember what's in there. There's another OK one. So all the OK stuff that was reissued for selector disc, this guy was there. It was a local Midlands guy who owned all these, by the way. That, he said, was his favourite record at the time, and today it's not worthless, but it's not played. Nobody considers it a great record. It's an instrumental, but he said at the time it was his favourite record. There's an import from Europe, promo of Earl Cosby, Oh Honey Babe. But as you can see, here is an original OK label. Big 45 there, that's the first press, Soul A Go-Go, big stomping thing that was played in the early days. And then there's one of the best records of all time that was ever made, Jackie Lee, Oh My Darling. And another OK record was a demo. This was a reissue of Len Jules Betting on Love, which came out on pink Terry Deer originally, extremely rare, and also Fontana. And then there's things like this, which 1971, this was a big record. 1972, and it was English, and it's Chris Farlow, a B-side, and it's fantastic Northern Soul, and that was found by those Northern Soul pioneers who were playing A-sides, B-sides, and everything they could get their hands on to try and see if there's anything in England with the sound. That's a bootleg of Bobby Garrett. That's a reissue again for selector disc. So I consider this really as a time capsule, as a piece of Northern Soul history. And there were some great records in it. There's a lot of reissues in it, a lot of records that are pretty valueless. But I was talking to the guy, and see, that's that's Scepter Wand selector disc, asking them to repress the big records at the time, which is Shirel's Last Minute Miracle was a huge record in 72, and there you go, selector disc had it remade. And there's some Simon Susan bootlegs, Simon Susan bootleg. And I think this is just a time capsule of the time, and I love it. There's another Rick Tick bootleg, so the Rick Ticks were being bootlegged. There's a bootleg of Superlatives, and this is a bootleg of an original I showed you earlier of Lennis Guest Just Ask Me. You can see they've got the same colours and the same thing, but this is made out of vinyl. The original is styrene. So it just goes on, and you've got to love this label as well. A subsidiary of Soul City, and you know, they're just beautiful. As a kid, you're finding records like that on market stores, and you did. And as you can see, hole in the wall. I like to show you this one because this record was covered up locally. The guy who owned the records, his brother, brought this back from the Twisted Wheel, and it was in his collection. And the younger brother thought, I'll tell you what I'll do, I'll cover it up, and you can see where it's stuck down another label over the top. I'll call it something else and play it to the local kids, and nobody will know what it was. And I actually can remember him doing that, and we didn't know what it was, and we thought it was great. But and here we go again. I'll just, if you have a look at here, that was a big Cats tune, and these are all, and you see then in the middle of it was a record that never went anywhere on the Northern Soul scene, but probably got picked up in a soul pack or something, and today's considered a sweet soul masterpiece. Really, it's beautiful, out of Newark, New Jersey, and there's it, that Sue label again, etc. There's the very first press of Cracked Up Over You by Danny White, when Selector Disc commissioned for it to be repressed, because this was a monster record. The Decca repressed it with tiny writing there instead of the large writing, and there's another one that never took off on the Northern Soul scene that much, but today is really collectible, and he must have bought that somewhere along the line, just liked it. First press of Charlie Rich, Love Is After Me, and some more Soul Cities. Look at that, he liked his Soul Cities. But here we go. We've got a time warp, all encapsulated into these 3 boxes, and I think it needed to go onto YouTube to be looked at, and it's a window into the 1970s, the early 1970s, and if you come in close on this one, like we did on the Like one, Gene Carter, and you can read that. Another old torch cruise sound used to make your feet feel like they were full of electricity, all powered up so that once they started dancing they just wouldn't stop. Fantastic. But that's how that is exactly how we felt, and I'm just excited that I'm able to look back at when I was a kid, and this looks like my collection from 1973, and you know, with the omission of Dotty Cambridge and things like that, which were all in that big Bradford load that hit Great Britain back in 70. I hope you enjoyed that, because this will all go out separately into the Northern Soul community, so I just wanted to get it on film before it was all lost and spread across the world.